12. Love and hip-hop stars get out of control. During the summer of 2023, Atlanta police responded to a call about a physical altercation at a local bar. They arrived to find a group of 4 people fighting with security guards. 3 of the suspects were identified as Love and hip-hop stars 35-year-old Erica Mena, 35-year-old Rodney Shaw, and 37-year-old Annie Richardson. A 4th suspect, Kareem Cadet, was also arrested at the scene. A responding officer tried to de-escalate the fight by intervening, but instead of calming down, the suspects allegedly turned their frustrations towards the police. The cops later learned that security had asked the group to leave the business several times before things got physical, but they allegedly refused, and the rising tensions eventually came to blows. All 4 suspects were charged with willful obstruction of a law enforcement officer. Mena and Shaw were each charged with simple battery. Mena was hit with an additional charge of simple battery against a police officer, while Kareem Cadet was charged with simple assault. Unfortunately though, the details about why the group was asked to leave the club are unclear. 11. Christopher McDonald. American actor Christopher McDonald is best known for his role in Happy Gilmore. In 2017, he was arrested for drunk driving after crashing his Porsche into a highway embankment in Lake Arrowhead, California. McDonald pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor count of driving with a blood alcohol content of 0.08 or higher. The judge spared the 62-year-old from prison, instead sentencing him to time served and 3 years of probation. He was also required to complete 35 hours of community service. And after completing an alcohol education program, he was ordered to undergo substance abuse treatment. It wasn't McDonald's first brush with the law for allegedly driving drunk. 4 years earlier, in 2013, he was arrested in Wilmington, North Carolina after failing a breathalyzer during a traffic stop. McDonald told Entertainment Tonight that he wasn't driving at the time of his arrest, but under North Carolina law, the police can arrest someone for drunk driving even if the vehicle isn't moving. 10. Danny Serafini. While responding to a call at a residence in North Lake Tahoe, California in 2021, police found 70-year-old Robert Gary Sfor dead from a single gunshot wound. Sfor's wife, Wendy Wood, was also shot but survived. 2 years went by before authorities announced the arrest of Serafini's son-in-law, former Major League Baseball player Danny Serafini, and a 33-year-old woman named Samantha Scott in connection with the case. In 2023, police located the 49-year-old in Nevada and took him into custody on a first-degree murder charge. Authorities also arrested Scott in Nevada, and both defendants are facing attempted murder and burglary charges. By then, Wendy Wood had passed away after undergoing extensive therapy to relearn basic tasks. According to police, the murder happened during a robbery gone wrong. Few other details have been released to the public. Serafini pleaded not guilty and remains in custody pending the outcome of his case. He played for multiple teams during his 7-year Major League career, including the Minnesota Twins, the Chicago Cubs, the San Diego Padres, and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Serafini left the league in 2007 after being suspended for 50 games for testing positive for performance-enhancing drugs. In 2015, the former pro athlete's failing business was featured on the show Bar Rescue. By then, he'd reportedly lost more than $14 million to bad investments and a divorce settlement. Serafini convinced his parents to take out a loan using their house as a guarantee so that he could purchase the Oak Tavern Bar in Sparks, Nevada. Business seemed to improve at the establishment after the episode aired, but the bar ended up shuttering its doors for good a few years later. In addition to remaining tight-lipped about the details of the crime, authorities have not speculated on a possible motive. The outcome of the case remains to be seen. 9. Sergio Brown. In September 2023, 73-year-old Myrtle Brown's son reported her missing in Maywood, Illinois. He hadn't heard from his mother in days, and she was nowhere to be found. Myrtle's other son, 35-year-old former NFL player Sergio Brown, had also mysteriously vanished from the home that the two shared. A search was launched, and Myrtle's body was found near a creek behind her home. Her remains were wrapped in a blanket, and someone attacked her with such force that they snapped her neck. The Cook County Medical Examiner classified the senior citizen's death as a homicide, and the discovery of Myrtle's body raised even more questions about Sergio's whereabouts. 2 days later, Sergio appeared to mock the missing persons report in a bizarre Instagram video. He said that he believed his mother was on vacation. He accused the FBI of trying to kidnap him and dismissed his mother's murder as fake news. Meanwhile, DNA from blood found on the porch of the Browns' home and underneath Myrtle's fingernails turned up as a match for Sergio. Investigators also found Ajax cleaner in the bathroom drain, as if someone had been trying to get rid of evidence. Authorities issued an arrest warrant against Sergio, who was in Mexico at the time. He was allegedly using his mother's credit cards to fund his travels and had stolen her iPad and several other belongings. Carlos Cortez, who lives in the neighborhood where Sergio and Myrtle shared a home, told local station WBBM that Sergio had not been acting right in the months leading up to his mother's death. The neighbor reportedly gave investigators doorbell camera footage that appeared to show Sergio burning Myrtle's clothes in a bonfire shortly before he vanished. 2 weeks after the discovery of Myrtle's body, Sergio posted footage of himself partying and dancing with women in Tulum, seemingly without a care in the world. Shortly thereafter, law enforcement confronted him during a flight to Colombia. Sergio threw punches and screamed that he was being kidnapped as he was taken into custody. He was extradited to Illinois, where he remains in custody on suspicion of first-degree murder and concealment of a body. Only time will tell what his punishment will be. 8. Tiffany Haddish. 44-year-old comedian and actress Tiffany Haddish caught her first big break when she landed a leading role in the 2017 film Girls Trip. The following year, Time magazine included her on its list of the world's 100 most influential people. Haddish has also won an Emmy and a Grammy Award for her work. But she's also faced her fair share of controversy, including 2 DUI arrests that made news headlines across the US. The first arrest happened in January 2022 after 911 dispatchers in Fayette County, Georgia, received calls about a driver asleep at the wheel along a highway. Police located Haddish right as she was trying to pull into someone's driveway. Suspecting that she was high on marijuana, they arrested her on a DUI charge. This first case was still pending when Haddish was nabbed for a second time in November of 2023. Officers in Los Angeles reportedly found her slumped over the steering wheel, with her car running after receiving reports about a driver who'd stopped in the middle of the road. In early 2024, Haddish struck a plea deal with prosecutors and got the DUI counts dropped in exchange for her willingness to plead guilty to a reduced misdemeanor charge. She was sentenced to 40 hours of community service and summary probation, which means that the court will continue to oversee her case rather than the probation department. Haddish was also ordered to pay fines and complete a driver's education program. She may have gotten mostly off the hook in criminal court, but the outspoken entertainer recently suffered a large blow to her fanbase for posting photos of herself sipping a cocktail in business class on a flight to Israel. At the very least, a lot of people thought the timing was poor, given the ongoing war between Israel and the Islamic militant group Hamas. Haddish told her fans that she relies on marijuana to treat the pain she suffers due to endometriosis. She stopped after her sentencing, mainly because she didn't have a choice unless she wanted to risk further problems with the law. As of April 2024, Haddish remains sober and has also gone vegan for her health. 7. Bruno Fernandes de Souza. Brazilian soccer player Bruno Fernandes das Torres de Souza was at the peak of his fame when he was accused of murdering his mistress in 2010. The victim, 25-year-old Eliza Samudio, had gotten pregnant and refused to get an abortion, and Bruno refused to support the child, so Eliza sued him for it. During that same time period, Eliza disappeared, and her newborn son mysteriously turned up in the care of Bruno's wife. More than a month later, a teenage cousin of Bruno's told investigators that he had participated in Eliza's abduction. He also implicated the soccer star's friend, Luis Enrique Ferreira Romayo, as well as other accomplices. Through their sources, police learned that Eliza had been kidnapped, beaten, and murdered while Bruno watched. Her body was then dismembered and fed to the athlete's pet Rottweilers. Bruno eventually admitted to his role in organizing the plot, and in 2013 he was found guilty of murder, concealing a body, and kidnapping his and Eliza's son. He was sentenced to 22 years in prison, but was freed in 2017 after serving just 6 years. The decision to free him came after his lawyer filed a habeas corpus petition due to the enormously slow pace of processing Bruno's appeal on his case. Numerous soccer teams immediately made contract offers to Bruno following his release. Eliza's mother sued to get him sent back to prison, but she was unsuccessful. After 2 months of freedom, Bruno was sent back to prison to await his appeal, after the court found that the defense had caused some of the delays that they were experiencing. Just 2 years later, Bruno was transferred to a day release program meant to prepare prisoners for re-entry into society. He was supposed to sleep in jail every night, but because the facility lacked the resources to accommodate prisoners who come and go, Bruno was allowed to return home on house arrest. He was paroled in early 2023 and has since returned to his soccer career. It would be an understatement to say that Eliza and her loved ones did not see justice served. Bruno's not even being kept under strict rules and only has to meet with a supervisor every 3 months. It's a scary amount of freedom for someone who orchestrated the torture and execution of a woman he chose to risk pregnancy with, only to blame her for a situation it takes two to create. 6. Shannon Guess Richardson. In May of 2013, President Barack Obama and the New York City mayor at the time, Michael Bloomberg, received letters in the mail containing small amounts of a toxic substance called ricin. A third ricin-filled envelope was sent to Mark Glaze, who was serving as the director of the Mayors Against Illegal Guns nonprofit. Found naturally in castor beans, ricin is a highly toxic compound that can kill a person in extremely small amounts. It causes internal bleeding and organ failure, followed by a fatal collapse of the circulatory system. Thankfully, though, the toxin's presence was detected in the letters in time to prevent anyone from being poisoned. The envelopes, which were postmarked in Shreveport, Louisiana, also contained threatening letters that appeared to be written by a pro-gun advocate who believed that the federal government was trying to take people's firearms away. Each letter contained a warning to the effect of, "What's in this letter is nothing compared to what I've got planned for you." As federal authorities worked to trace the letter's origins, a small-time actress named Shannon Guess Richardson contacted the feds and claimed that her estranged husband Nathan was responsible for the toxic correspondence. The 36-year-old mother of 5, who's best known for her roles on The Walking Dead and The Vampire Diaries, told investigators that she found a post-it note with the victims' addresses written on it in her husband's handwriting. Federal agents confronted Nathan, who denied any involvement and suggested that Shannon was the true culprit. But the situation didn't get any better for him when the agents looked inside the trunk of his car and found a handful of castor beans. During a polygraph exam the next day, Shannon admitted to doing things that would make Nathan get caught, like putting the beans in his truck, but she claimed that she did these things because she truly believed he was guilty. By then, the authorities were already doubting her narrative. Shannon's story fell apart entirely when they discovered that the letters contained labels that were printed at a time when Nathan was definitely at work. Nathan's co-workers confirmed that he was there during the time in question, and Shannon was charged with mailing a threatening communication to the president. She tried to convince the investigators that Nathan had forced her to mail the letters for him, but they were confident enough that they had the right suspect to move forward with the case against her. Several months after her arrest, Shannon took a plea deal and admitted to 1 count of possession of a toxin for use as a weapon. The charge carries a maximum sentence of life in prison, but she took the deal based on the agreement that she would serve no more than 18 years. 5. Russell Neal. The Texas-based R&B group High Five hit their peak popularity when they scored a #1 hit in the 1990s. They pretty much went back to being unknown after that, although they've continued to make music on and off over the years. Not long after the boy band made it big, one of the original 5 members, Russell Neal, quit the group because he wanted more singing parts and the manager said no. For the next 20 years, he ran through the daily motions of life, but failed to leverage his talents into a fruitful career. In fact, he allegedly went long stretches of time without working, period. Russell continued to ride on his former fame as a way to impress people. It was enough to catch the attention of a much younger woman in her early 20s named Catherine Martinez, who now has 2 children with the former celebrity. Catherine, an aspiring fitness model, was the breadwinner of their family, while Russell remained unemployed and broke. The couple also experienced domestic violence issues. For a long time, Catherine stood by her man, even though he reportedly refused to work and made her pay him to babysit their own children. But she eventually got fed up and tried to disentangle from Russell, which proved to be easier said than done. Also known by her stage name Brasilia Martinez, Catherine was extremely dedicated to her training regimen. So when she failed to show up at her gym in Killeen for a planned session in 2014, her training partner became worried. Not long after that, Russell entered a Houston police station and said that Catherine might need medical attention. He admitted that they'd fought, but refused to provide any details beyond that. Emergency responders arrived at Catherine's apartment to find her bludgeoned and stabbed to death. Russell lawyered up and continued refusing to talk as he faced a first-degree murder charge for Catherine's death. The case ground to a standstill as the accused killer's mental health landed at the center of his court proceedings. In the opinion of Catherine's loved ones, Russell was playing crazy to avoid prison time. But the court ultimately ruled that he was incompetent to stand trial, and he was ordered to undergo treatment indefinitely at a state hospital. There have been no major updates on the case since, indicating that Russell likely remains hospitalized as the 10th anniversary of the gruesome slaying approaches. And while it's good that he's in a confined setting, it's a far cry from the justice that Catherine and her loved ones deserve. It's also unclear what will happen if his mental health improves enough for him to be deemed competent. 4. Tim Lambesis. American musician Tim Lambesis skyrocketed to fame during the 2000s as the frontman of the Grammy-nominated heavy metal band As I Lay Dying. But his career took a backseat to his legal problems in 2013, when he was arrested for trying to hire a hitman to kill his wife. At the time, Tim and Megan Murphy Lambesis were separated. Megan had filed for divorce the previous year amid Tim's increasingly erratic and bizarre behavior. This included a growing obsession with bodybuilding that compelled him to spend hours upon hours at the gym. Tim believed Megan was purposely making it difficult for him to see their children, and he felt like the divorce was never going to be finalized. Most people who have been through a divorce would probably agree that it can feel extremely frustrating and drawn out. Most people suck it up and endure the process. After all, there's not much else they can do. But apparently, Tim wasn't willing to do that, so he began looking for an alternative solution to his problems. While working out at a gym in Oceanside, California, he mentioned to a fellow gym-goer that he wanted someone to kill his estranged wife and that he was willing to pay a hitman. It would have likely been easy to just assume that Tim was venting and that he didn't intend to put any action behind his words. But he must have seemed at least somewhat serious because the person he opened up to reported the conversation to the police. Tim was put in touch with an undercover San Diego County cop who was posing as a hitman. He met with the undercover agent and provided all the specifics, including how he wanted Megan to die. He also offered up her address, the codes to her home security system, and some photos so the so-called hitman knew who to target. The embattled musician also handed over a down payment of $1,000, at which point the police came out of the woodwork and arrested him. Tim initially pleaded not guilty, but eventually he admitted to his role in the murder-for-hire plot. He was sentenced to 6 years and was paroled in late 2016 after serving just a portion of his sentence. When Tim first left prison, his former bandmates wanted nothing to do with him. They were angry at him for his actions and felt that he'd made excuses for his behavior. But prison gives people a lot of time to think. And Tim re-entered the free world as a man who'd reflected deeply on his wrongdoings and seemed truly remorseful. The band reunited the following year and even went on to release a 7th album. Tim also apologized to his ex-wife and children for the pain he caused to their lives and has since remarried. By all appearances, he seems to be on a better path, and hopefully it'll stay that way. 3. Darren Sharper. Former football player Darren Sharper enjoyed a solid 14-season career with the NFL before retiring in 2010. He played in 2 Super Bowls and was recognized as one of the league's top defensive backs. But Sharper's reputation took a sudden and shocking downturn in early 2011. Women in different cities across the US began coming forward with allegations that he and 2 co-conspirators had drugged and assaulted them. The former pro athlete was hit with federal charges in connection with assaults against 9 women. But authorities believe that the actual number of victims may be much higher. In the first complaint, 2 college students claimed that they blacked out while celebrating spring break in Miami. One of the women wrote in her complaint to police that she awoke in Sharper's condo to a man touching her inappropriately. Suspecting that she'd been drugged and violated, she woke up her friend, who had similar suspicions. The women immediately went to the hospital and the police, but law enforcement allegedly failed to thoroughly investigate their complaints. They also dismissed the medical evidence that was taken during their trip to the emergency room. Sharper and his co-conspirators were also accused of drugging and assaulting at least 4 women in New Orleans, 3 women in Los Angeles, 2 Las Vegas residents, and 2 women in Tempe, Arizona. In addition to the federal charges, they were charged with state-level crimes in California, Louisiana, Arizona, and Nevada. It was revealed in court that Sharper and his co-defendants were drugging their victims with heavy medications like Xanax, Valium, and Ambien. And in a shocking twist that only makes an already disturbing situation even more horrifying, one of Sharper's co-defendants was a cop. Brandon Licciardi served as a sheriff's deputy in St. Bernard Parish, Louisiana, for 8 years leading up to his arrest. Sharper pleaded guilty to 2 counts of distributing drugs with the intent to commit SA, as well as 1 count of conspiracy to distribute for the same purpose. He was sentenced to 18 years and 4 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Shortly after his federal sentencing, a Louisiana judge sentenced him to 20 years in state prison. He also received a 20-year sentence in California, a 9-year sentence in Arizona, and a 3 to 8-year sentence in Nevada. Sharper's sentences are running concurrently, which unfortunately means that he will see freedom again relatively soon. He's due to be released from prison in 2028. Licciardi pleaded guilty to a similar federal charge and received a 17-year sentence, along with a concurrent state sentence in Louisiana. A third co-defendant, Eric Nunez, was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. During his federal sentencing hearing, Sharper apologized through tears and said that he didn't understand why he started making such terrible decisions after living a law-abiding existence for the first 38 years of his life. The judge also struggled to wrap her mind around Sharper's decisions, especially since he came from a respectable background and grew up in a loving household. While delivering a victim impact statement, one woman reminded Sharper that he didn't just make a mistake. A mistake doesn't keep happening over and over the way the assaults did. As the unnamed survivor put it, Sharper flipped the middle finger at the judicial system and the women he assaulted because he didn't think the judicial system was capable of stopping him. 2. Robert Blake. Emmy Award-winning actor Robert Blake's career began in the 1930s and included hundreds of roles over a nearly 60-year time span. In 1999, 2 years after his departure from the movie scene, he met a woman named Bonnie Lee Bakley. She was a 9-time divorcee with a reputation for allegedly being a gold digger who specifically targeted famous men. Bakley had been arrested in the past for suspected fraud and was once pulled over in Arkansas with 7 different social security cards in her possession. This suggested that her financial crimes extended beyond persuading rich men to take care of her. Given her reputation, it would have been smart for Blake not to even get involved with her. But he did, and in late 1999, Bakley revealed that she was pregnant. At the time, Bakley was also dating Marlon Brando's son Christian Brando. She admitted to Blake that she didn't know who the child's father was. Blake insisted on a DNA test, which proved that he was the child's father. And now that he knew for sure that the baby was his, he did what he believed was the right thing for their daughter. He married Bakley, even though he didn't exactly seem crazy about her. Despite being married, Blake and Bakley never lived together. Bakley lived in a separate building on Blake's property in Los Angeles, but the couple still carried on a relationship of some sort. In May of 2001, they went out to dinner at an Italian restaurant in Studio City. As the pair were getting in the car to leave afterward, Blake realized that he'd left his gun inside. He went to get it while Bakley waited in the car, but he came back outside to find her dead in the vehicle with a gunshot wound to the head. Police ruled out Blake's gun as the murder weapon, but their suspicions nevertheless remained focused on him. In 2002, authorities charged Blake with murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and 2 counts of solicitation of murder. The disgraced actor could have faced the death penalty if convicted as charged, but he decided to take the case to trial and try his luck with the jury. Even before the trial, junior prosecutor Shelley Samuels admitted during a CBS interview that there was no forensic evidence linking Blake to Bakley's murder. The prosecution's case grew even weaker when the judge dismissed the conspiracy charge during a pre-trial hearing. During the trial, retired stuntman Ronald Duffy Hamilton testified that Blake had asked him to kill Backley. He was one of the state's two star witnesses, with the other being retired stuntman Gary McGlarty. Both men claimed that Blake constantly trash-talked his wife and entertained a myriad of ideas for how to have her killed. This included the possibility of Blake leaving Backley alone in the car during a dinner date, giving a hired hitman the opportunity to strike. But the former stuntmen also had checkered pasts, including a history of methamphetamine abuse and mental breakdowns resulting from their drug use. The defense made sure to point these details out during cross-examination. They also based a large part of their case on depicting Backley as a greedy and morally bankrupt drug user. The trial ended with a hung jury, and Blake walked away a free man. But his life had gone down the tubes due to his criminal case, and it didn't get much better afterward. He was ordered to pay $30 million to Backley's surviving family members in a wrongful death lawsuit, by which point he was already up to his eyeballs in debt from his legal fees. Blake went bankrupt, and he also lost in the court of public opinion, with many people resigning to the belief that he had murdered Backley despite being acquitted. He maintained his innocence until his death in 2023 at the age of 89. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. 1. Wendy Williams. Self-made TV and radio personality Wendy Williams has always been somewhat of a controversial character. She got her start as a shock jock in New York City, where she became well known for her tendency to share her thoughts and opinions in a brutally honest fashion. Williams was popular and unpopular for displaying a similar demeanor on her namesake talk show, which began airing in 2008 and ran for 13 seasons. While many famous people are quick to apologize after they put their foot in their mouth, Wendy is not one of them. She issued one of her rare apologies in 2016 after she addressed singer Kesha's claims of assault with a seemingly accusatory tone. Williams asked Kesha why she didn't record the abuse and in turn was accused of victim blaming. During her apology, she said that unfortunately people tend to lie about these types of situations, so she was just being skeptical. Williams came under fire again a few years later for her cringe-worthy remarks, including stating that she was tired of the Me Too movement. She defended serial predator R. Kelly by claiming that an underage victim had given consent. She also allegedly mocked actor Joaquin Phoenix's upper lip scar, which is commonly mistaken as a cleft palate. Wendy's behavior became so outrageous that a petition to fire her garnered more than 70,000 signatures in 2020. She issued another one of her rare apologies via Twitter, and her show donated to a cleft palate charity. But her controversial commentary just kept on coming. Just weeks later, Williams was accused of making homophobic remarks on her show. She apologized again, only to be criticized, this time for making jokes and insensitive comments about murder victims. Wendy's escalating behavior was uncharacteristic even for her. She also took multiple absences from her show starting in 2018 due to ongoing health issues, including an immune system disorder called Graves' disease. In mid-2021, Williams left the show to prioritize her health. She hoped to eventually return, but her health continued to worsen and the show was cancelled. The ailing presenter's whereabouts were often a mystery during her repeated medical absences and after the show ended. In 2019, she stayed at a sober house for a while and was diagnosed with lymphedema, which caused her feet to swell. Around the time her show was cancelled, Wells Fargo froze Wendy's bank accounts and other assets due to concerns over recent spending patterns. Bank officials were concerned that Wendy's mental state might be suffering and that someone might be taking advantage of her. A court put Williams under a conservatorship and appointed a guardian to handle her finances. Wendy denied rumors about her ailing mental health, but her disappearances from public view lasted longer and longer, and her behavior on the rare occasions when she was seen became increasingly unusual. She hoped to get well and return to TV or radio, but that unfortunately never happened. Her mental state continued to worsen, and in 2023, she was diagnosed with aphasia and frontotemporal dementia. In early 2024, Lifetime released a heartbreaking 4-part series documenting Wendy's life since 2022. Wendy's heavy drinking was a major theme of the story, with her loved ones trying to limit her alcohol intake while she resisted these attempts. She also displayed volatile and erratic behavior, often bursting into tears and going from pleasant to furious in the blink of an eye. In one scene, Williams had her driver circle around the same New York City block repeatedly. Wendy didn't handle the sudden control over her life and finances very well, but who would after being independent all their life and then losing all decision-making power over their personal matters? At the same time, it's understandable that Wendy's family tried getting her to stop drinking. Her memory issues seemed to worsen significantly when she drank, and it's even been speculated that her drinking habit contributed to the early onset dementia that she suffers from. But that's not the case, according to Wendy's court-appointed guardian Sabrina Morrissey, who accused Lifetime of shamelessly exploiting the troubled TV host by releasing the documentary. Morrissey sued to try blocking the show's release, arguing that Wendy lacked the mental capacity to consent to the filming contract. She also claimed that she wasn't notified about the show's release ahead of time. She claimed that she learned about it at the same time as everyone else, when promotional teasers began airing on TV. Most people don't seem to be laughing though. The documentary seems to mostly be eliciting compassionate and concerned reactions. And while the specifics surrounding Wendy's health problems are unclear, doctors say that drinking alcohol does seem to make some people more likely to develop dementia. One thing that everyone seems to agree on is that Wendy's on-camera career is over. She spent considerable time at an undisclosed healthcare facility and is reportedly doing a lot better. But she remains out of the public eye for now, and her plans to return to showbiz are on the back burner.
Number 11. Lonnie Willison. Former fitness and bikini model Lonnie Willison and ex-Baywatch star Jeremy Jackson divorced in 2014 after just 2 short years of marriage. Their relationship had become extremely toxic, with Willison accusing her ex-husband of attempting to strangle her during a drunken fight, and other disturbing allegations being slung back and forth between the former lovers. Willison disappeared from the Hollywood scene over the next 4 years. When photos of her finally reappeared in the media in 2018, she was unrecognizable compared to her former self. After being evicted from her home 2 years earlier in 2016, the once jaw-dropping blonde bombshell had spent the majority of her time living on the streets of Venice Beach. She now suffers from a serious methamphetamine addiction, is missing teeth, and has been seen dumpster diving for food, smoking meth, and pushing around a shopping cart filled with her only worldly belongings. During one interview with the Daily Mail, Willison claimed that she purposely went a year without bathing in an effort to discourage men from violating her. Photos captured during the interview showed that her hands, feet, and legs were covered in dirt. Friends of the troubled woman have told the press that they've offered help to Lonnie multiple times, but she doesn't want it. For some reason, she seems to feel betrayed by everyone she was once close with. She's made it abundantly clear that she wants to be left alone. In one intervention attempt that was partially captured on camera in 2018, Lonnie's estranged friend Kristen Rossetti approached her as she slept on a sidewalk in broad daylight. Daily Mail journalists took Lonnie to a hotel so she could clean up, rest, and catch up with Kristen. She was offered a free 3-month stay at a posh rehab valued at $90,000, but she fled the next morning after spending the night at the hotel. Under California law, a homeless person cannot be forced off the street if they're not an imminent threat to themselves or others, even if they're suffering from obvious mental health issues. Lonnie's friends had tried to help her, but if she didn't want it, there was nothing they could do about it. During an interview with X17 in May of 2023, Lonnie blamed her downfall on her marriage to Jeremy Jackson. She claimed that everything went downhill from there. When the interviewer asked her if she had sought help from the city, she said that there's nothing anyone can offer her and that there's no helping her. Under United States law, it's extremely difficult to convince a court to institutionalize someone against their will for mental health reasons. Do you think that the law should allow loved ones and/or authorities to step in and take control in situations like Lonnie's? Why or why not? Let me know in the comments below. Number 10. Amanda Bynes. Amanda Bynes rose to stardom in 1996 at the delicate age of just 10 years old when she landed a role on Nickelodeon's All That children's comedy show. She went on to become highly successful over the next 14 years, but she put the brakes on her career in 2010 when she announced that she was taking a break from acting. By then, the young starlet had already turned heads with her strange behavior on the set of the movie Hall Pass. She ended up leaving the project, and by 2012, she was making headlines more often for her erratic outbursts than she was for her acting skills. That same year, Bynes went on a campaign of self-destructive behavior that began with a series of traffic violations, including talking on her cell phone while driving, hitting a car and fleeing the scene, and crashing into a cop car while allegedly under the influence. Instead of owning up to the accusations against her, Bynes posted a tweet claiming that she didn't drink alcohol and urging then-President Barack Obama to fire the officer who arrested her. She claimed she was doing better than ever despite facing 2 hit-and-run charges in connection to unrelated incidents and being dropped by her agent, her lawyer, and her publisher. The reckless behavior continued as Bynes threatened to sue numerous publications for making statements that she claimed were inaccurate, including that she was mentally ill and that she had been seen walking around naked in a tanning salon. In a 2013 In Touch interview, she claimed that she was sober and that she didn't understand why people accused her of being crazy. When photos of an alleged drug-fueled party at her Manhattan apartment were leaked, she denied being the person in the photos and claimed that the alleged lookalike was an imposter. Over the following handful of years, Bynes faced drug charges, spent time in a psych ward, went to rehab, accused her father of childhood abuse that her parents adamantly denied, and allegedly started a fire on her property. She eventually revealed that she had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and manic depression. Her social media activity grew increasingly sparse and then stopped completely in 2015. She's kept mostly quiet since then, but has opened up about her mental health struggles and prior drug use in rare interviews and has continued to occasionally make news headlines. In 2020, it appeared as though Bynes had gotten her life on track as she celebrated 1 year of sobriety. 2 years later, a judge freed her from a 9-year conservatorship, giving her control over her healthcare decisions for the first time in nearly a decade. But it became apparent that things had unfortunately gone downhill again in March of 2023, when Bynes was allegedly seen walking naked in downtown Los Angeles. She reportedly flagged down a car and called 911 on herself and was detained in a psychiatric hold. The Los Angeles Times reported that Bynes was released to outpatient care the following month, although a representative for the troubled 37-year-old declined to confirm the news. Bynes was taken into custody on yet another psychiatric hold in June of 2023. According to the most recent available updates, her family has grown increasingly concerned over her behavior as she undergoes therapy and medication management for her mental health struggles. Number 9. Floyd Mayweather Jr. Award-winning American boxer Floyd Mayweather Jr. ended his 21-year career with an undefeated record when he retired in 2017. He's widely considered one of the best boxers of all time, not only in his class, but across the entire board, and his success has brought him both fame and fortune. In 2018, Mayweather was ranked as the world's highest-paid athlete, with his total earnings valued at $285 million. In 2021, he was rated as the 6th highest-paid athlete of all time, with his career earnings estimated at $1.2 billion. But Mayweather's success has not been without controversy. During the early 2000s, he was convicted in misdemeanor battery cases involving 2 women. He also faced a battery charge for allegedly assaulting a bouncer. In 2010 and 2011, he became entangled in a drawn-out court case in connection with domestic violence allegations brought by his ex-wife and the mother of 3 of his 4 children, Josie Harris. While many were willing to overlook Mayweather's legal issues in order to maintain their idyllic vision of the champion fighter, those who paid attention to the legal proceedings were met with a disturbing slew of allegations. According to one criminal complaint, Mayweather harmed Harris in front of his children and threatened to do the same thing to them if they dialed 911 or sought help, which Harris was yelling for them to do. For some people, the allegations of domestic violence were enough to earn their disapproval of Mayweather. Others drew the line when they found out that there were children supposedly involved. Mayweather took a plea deal and admitted to misdemeanor battery in exchange for getting a felony battery charge dropped. He also pleaded no contest to 2 counts of misdemeanor harassment in connection with the alleged threats against his children. The judge sentenced him to 90 days in jail and ordered him to attend a domestic violence education program. In the years since, Mayweather has continued to make headlines for his behavior, including diva-like outbursts in public and alleged displays of arrogance. Some have even described him as an all-out egomaniac. In December 2014, the New York Daily News reported that the boxer threw a so-called pissy fit when a saleswoman at Saks Fifth Avenue refused to let him use a bathroom that had been cordoned off for a special event. Mayweather allegedly called the staff member the B-word and shoved her, prompting the young woman to dial 911. While it's unclear whether Mayweather was still at the store when cops showed up, there were no witnesses to corroborate the employee's claims, and therefore no arrests were made. In 2017, Mayweather allegedly called Justin Bieber a traitor for unfollowing him on Instagram, with sources telling TMZ that the boxer went insane and nuclear when he discovered that he had been snubbed by the Bieb. Despite these and other instances of erratic outbursts, along with more recent allegations of participating in a cryptocurrency pump and dump scheme, the indisputably talented yet controversial athlete remains widely admired in the world of professional boxing. Number 8. Chris Brown. American singer-songwriter Chris Brown is one of those celebrities who has managed to avoid being completely shunned from the spotlight despite his questionable behavior over the years, most likely due to the fact that he's undeniably talented. He first made headlines for his alleged short temper in 2009 when he was accused of beating up his then-girlfriend, pop singer Rihanna. Fans were shocked when photos of the songstress with severe facial injuries appeared in the press, and Brown later pleaded guilty to felony assault in connection with the case. The judge sentenced him to 5 years of probation and ordered him to undergo domestic violence counseling. During a Larry King Live interview later that year, Brown expressed shock over the incident, stating that it didn't reflect the person he wanted to be. The singer's probation was revoked in 2013 following an alleged hit-and-run in Los Angeles. The charges came on the heels of several other questionable incidents, including a hostile run-in with Drake's entourage in New York City and an alleged violent confrontation with musician Frank Ocean over a parking space in LA. While Brown managed to escape long-term accountability in these cases, including the hit-and-run, he was less fortunate when it came to a felony assault allegation he faced in October 2013. Brown was accused of punching a man in the face after refusing to take a photo with him. He pleaded guilty to a reduced misdemeanor charge and voluntarily entered rehab. A judge ordered him to remain in rehab for a certain amount of time in order to avoid going to jail, but he was kicked out of the program about a month before he would have fulfilled his requirement. He was ordered to spend 365 days in jail with credit for time served in rehab, during which time he was reportedly diagnosed with bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. Brown finished his probation in 2015, but landed in legal hot water again in August 2016 when a woman dialed 911 and accused him of threatening her with a gun at his residence. According to authorities, he refused to let LAPD officers into the home without a warrant. When they returned with a warrant, he allegedly continued to deny them entry into his home, resulting in what news sources described as a standoff. Prosecutors declined to pursue the charges, and the case was dropped. In the meantime, Brown chastised the media for what he described as false allegations that he had barricaded himself inside his house. He later sued his accuser and won after incriminating text messages about setting him up were found in the woman's phone. Brown went into further detail about the assault against Rihanna in the 2017 documentary Welcome to My Life. In the film, Brown said that he was planning on marrying Rihanna, but that she lost trust in him after discovering that he had lied about her previous relationship. Things apparently snowballed from there, culminating in the infamous encounter that the world still has not forgotten about. even though Brown's career managed to bounce back from the incident. In 2022, a woman sued Brown for allegedly assaulting her on a yacht off the Miami coast. He submitted text messages to authorities indicating that the encounter was consensual, and the case was ultimately dropped. Brown's latest controversy came in early 2023 when he threw a fit on social media after losing out on a Grammy Award to fellow musician Robert Glasper. Brown posted an Instagram story featuring a photo of Glasper and a caption stating, "Y'all playing, who the F is this?" followed by, "I'ma keep kicking y'all, respectively. He also posted an image along with a caption stating, "Who the bleep is Robert Glasper?" The bitter musician then reposted a TikTok video showcasing his ticket sales, chart ratings, and other accomplishments. Glasper took the insulting posts with a grain of salt and took a humorous approach, writing in one of his own posts that people have questions about who TF he is. A few days later, Brown posted a screenshot of a direct message he sent to Glasper congratulating the musician for his achievements. Brown also apologized for his reaction over the Grammy Award and claimed that Glasper wasn't the intended target, even though his angry post made it very clear that Glasper was the intended target. Brown went on to say that he respected Glasper's work, that the two men should be classified in two different genres because their music is nothing alike, and that he wishes Glasper the best. Many criticized Brown for what seemed like a half-hearted apology and a failure to truly own his actions, but most can probably agree that it was better than nothing. More than anything, the outburst proved that Brown still has the notoriously short temper he first became known for nearly 15 years earlier. Number 7. Courtney Love. Even if you weren't around yet during the early 90s or weren't old enough to remember anything that went on during that time, you've most likely heard of the band Nirvana. Their music has transcended generations in a way that makes them iconic even today, nearly 30 years after the untimely death of lead singer Kurt Cobain in 1994. Rewind to just a few years earlier, and Cobain's future looked promising despite his troubled past and his struggles with living in the spotlight. In early 1992, he married Courtney Love, the lead singer of an alternative rock band called Hole, which was successful in its own right, even if it didn't go down in history the way Nirvana has. 9 months after tying the knot, the couple welcomed their daughter into the world. By then, an article had come out detailing Kurt and Courtney's alleged drug use during her pregnancy, and social services petitioned to remove the child from their custody. The court ruled that the couple needed supervision in their child's presence, so they had relatives and nannies move in with them as a way to keep their daughter in the home full-time. They were still under court supervision when Kurt Cobain passed away at the couple's Seattle home in 1994. In the handful of years following his death, Courtney found herself in and out of drug rehab. Her behavior became increasingly self-destructive and included at least one instance of exposing herself to a complete stranger on a sidewalk. She also became known for her short temper in a series of alleged public outbursts, including a fight with an air stewardess in early 1995. A few months later, Courtney was accused of throwing a lit cigarette at musician Kathleen Hanna during the Lollapalooza Festival in Washington. She pleaded guilty to assault and was ordered to attend anger management. Love was also sued by 2 young men who accused her of punching them during a concert, but the judge dropped the case after concluding that the plaintiffs were exposed to the amount of violence that they could reasonably expect at an alternative rock performance. Love would later say that she barely remembered the years 1994 and 1995 because of the heavy amounts of heroin and other drugs she was using at the time. Between 1994 and 2004, Love was romantically linked with numerous big-name musicians, including Smashing Pumpkins frontman Billy Corgan, Nine Inch Nails mastermind Trent Reznor, and award-winning actor Edward Norton. In the meantime, Courtney's own musical success took a turn for the worse, with her 2004 solo album America's Sweetheart dropping off the Billboard charts just 4 weeks after its debut. Love has also dealt with speculation among Nirvana fans that Kurt Cobain was murdered. She was in rehab in Los Angeles at the time of his death, but those who are convinced that Cobain met with foul play have accused her of being involved. These allegations have persisted into the modern era, with filmmaker Ian Halperin calling on Courtney to take a polygraph to clear her name as recently as 2023. In his book, Case Closed, The Cobain Murder, The Killing and Cover-Up of Kurt Cobain, Halperin insists that he's not specifically accusing anyone of murder, but that he thinks a lie detector test could help set the record straight on Courtney's behalf. He even offered to pay for the test and, if the results deem that she's being truthful, to pay for a billboard in Times Square proclaiming love's innocence. Number 6. Oscar Pistorius. In 2012, South African sprint runner Oscar Pistorius became the first double amputee in history to compete in Olympic track events. Nicknamed the Blade Runner, he was born without a fibula in both legs and underwent a double amputation below the knee at a young age. He enjoyed a swift rise to freedom, but the short amount of time he spent in the spotlight for good reasons was cut short in 2013 when his girlfriend, model Reeva Steenkamp, was found shot to death in the bathroom of her home in Pretoria. Pistorius told investigators that he shot Steenkamp through a closed bathroom door after mistaking her for an intruder. But investigators remain skeptical about his claim that the shooting was an accident, and the up-and-coming athlete was charged with premeditated murder. Prosecutors accused Pistorius of shooting Steenkamp in a fit of rage after she locked herself in the bathroom during an argument. Pistorius maintained his innocence, but nevertheless admitted to feeling a sense of guilt. He broke down in tears on the stand while apologizing to Steenkamp's family for his tragic error in judgment. Many people remained unmoved by the emotional display, and some even accused Pistorius of taking acting lessons before the trial, which he denied doing. During the proceedings, the defense argued that the disgraced sprinter's actions on the night of Steenkamp's death were influenced by an anxiety disorder. But a team of court-appointed psychiatrists concluded that Pistorius did not suffer from clinical anxiety. Pistorius was found not guilty of premeditated murder in 2014, but was convicted of the lesser charge of culpable homicide. He was released from prison the following year on house arrest and probation. Unsatisfied with the outcome of the case, prosecutors fought the ruling. In 2015, South Africa's top appeals court ruled that Pistorius was guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced him to 6 years in prison. Once again, prosecutors argued that the sentence was too lenient and took the matter back to court. In 2017, the former runner's sentence was increased to 15 years. He became eligible for parole in 2023, but was denied his freedom and remains behind bars. During the parole hearing, Pistorius' lawyer described his client as a model prisoner, while Reeva Steenkamp's family argued that Pistorius was not rehabilitated or remorseful. They urged the parole board to keep him behind bars, and their wish was granted. Pistorius will revisit the parole board in 2024. Number 5. Brittany Murphy. Sharon Murphy believed so strongly in her daughter Brittany's star potential that the pair packed everything they owned and moved from New Jersey to Los Angeles in 1991, when Brittany was just 13 years old. The teen actress scored her first major role in the 1995 movie Clueless, and her fame only grew from there. Known for her versatility and convincing emotional displays, she went on to star in numerous award-winning films across several genres, including the 1999 drama Girl Interrupted, the 2001 horror flick Don't Say a Word, and the 2003 romantic comedies Just Married and Little Black Book. At the height of her career, Brittany was one of the most in-demand actresses in Hollywood, and it looked as though her success was only going to continue on an upward trajectory. Behind the scenes, Brittany's life was less than perfect. To those who knew her, it seemed like she struggled with self-esteem issues. Her insecurities were especially evident in the dramatic changes she made to her appearance after she skyrocketed to fame, going from brunette to blonde and shedding weight to the point where she became extremely thin. While it's easy to attribute these changes to the normal transformation that young women in Hollywood often went through during the 90s and often still do today, some of Brittany's loved ones began to wonder if she was losing herself in her newfound stardom. Meanwhile, rumors flew about the young starlet allegedly being addicted to cocaine and other drugs, which she adamantly denied. People also became alarmed by Brittany's imperiled dating life, which came across to some people in her circle as a pattern of serial dating and a seemingly desperate attempt for long-term companionship. In 2006, after a string of highly public failed relationships, Brittany Murphy met British screenwriter Simon Monjack. The two married the following year. From there on out, Brittany went from starring in A-list films to landing roles in Lifetime made-for-TV movies and low-budget indie projects. Her increasingly erratic and unreliable on-set behavior gave her a reputation of being difficult to work with, and her husband's constant meddling also dissuaded filmmakers from hiring her. It was clear that Brittany's career was going down the tubes, but most people didn't know exactly why. Throughout her marriage to Monjack, she withdrew noticeably from the public eye. On December 20th, 2009, 911 dispatchers received a call that Brittany was unresponsive at her home. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, but it was too late to save the troubled actress. She was just 32 years old. An autopsy concluded that Brittany had died from pneumonia-related complications, with iron deficiency anemia and multiple drug intoxication listed as secondary causes. The findings were met with widespread shock that she hadn't simply overdosed in the throes of addiction. It would later be revealed that Brittany had contracted pneumonia in the weeks leading up to her death and never went to the doctor for her symptoms. She was actively ill during her last interview 2 weeks before her death, during which she appeared visibly gaunt. People were further put off by the behavior of Brittany's grieving mother, Sharon, and her widower, Monjack, in the months following her death. To many, it seemed like the two were suspiciously close. They admitted to sharing a bed during their toughest times of mourning and posed for photos that seemed to convey an inappropriate degree of intimacy between two in-laws. Just 6 months after Brittany's death, Simon Monjack was found dead in the same home, and an autopsy ruled that he had also died from pneumonia. Brittany's mother later blamed toxic mold that was found in the residence, while her estranged father blamed heavy metal poisonings. Both were ultimately ruled out as contributing factors. The plain and simple truth is that the couple got sick and failed to seek treatment for it. Since then, many have pointed the finger at Simon Monjack not for directly killing Brittany, but for controlling her every move and isolating her to a point where he may have discouraged her from getting medical treatment. In the bombshell 2-part HBO documentary, What Happened, Brittany Murphy, acquaintances of the pair described Monjack as a smooth talker who overplayed his accomplishments and had Brittany under his spell. Some have even depicted him as a con artist who manipulated his way into Brittany's good graces at a low point in her dating life and pushed out her managers and others who were trying to act in her best interests. Many believe that Monjack used the actress for her money and influenced her to make self-destructive choices that led to the downfall of her career and ultimately to her death. While there's no official record on whether any of this is true, this tragic tale serves as a sobering reminder about who we let into our lives, especially at our most vulnerable moments. Number 4. Richard Simmons. American fitness personality Richard Simmons moved to Hollywood in the 1970s with the goal of becoming famous. He set himself apart from other ambitious hopefuls with his flamboyant and forward personality, and by catering to overweight clients rather than people who were already in shape, unlike most exercise studios of the time. Simmons first began to make a name for himself with the opening of his Beverly Hills gym, Simmons. His fame exploded with the creation of his exercise-at-home videos, including Sweatin' to the Oldies, which still holds the #1 spot for the biggest-selling home workout video of all time. In addition to his proven ability to help countless people lose weight, Simmons appealed to consumers by candidly sharing the story of his own weight loss journey. He struggled with childhood obesity and other issues, including a bedwetting problem that lasted into his teens. During an era when it was widely considered acceptable for people to openly judge each other based on their weight, this naturally led to social isolation. There has also been widespread speculation that Richard is gay, although he has never publicly discussed his sexuality. And while many people in today's world pass unfair judgment against homosexuality, the problem was even worse in previous decades. All things considered, Simmons could perhaps be described as somewhat of a tormented soul with a heartbreaking past. On more than one occasion, he described himself as having few friends, stating that he has little to offer one person, but that he has a lot to offer to a lot of people. To many, it seemed like he simply wanted to be accepted for who he was on the inside and out. Others perceived the statement as Simmons saying that he was content with his solitude and felt fulfilled by helping people even if he rarely got close with anyone. In 2014, Simmons abruptly withdrew from the spotlight, and he hasn't made any public appearances since. Over the following years, rumors speculating about his whereabouts and well-being ran rampant, starting with claims in early 2016 that his housekeeper was holding him hostage. Simmons denied the rumors in an audio interview with The Today Show, but it did little, if anything, to calm the growing concern among the public. The sudden closure of his gym later that year only further fueled gossip about him being in harm's way. There was even a podcast dedicated to the matter, followed by a TMZ documentary several years later. At some point, some people began to wonder if Simmons was still alive. There were also claims that he had undergone a gender reassignment procedure and that he was now living in plain sight as a woman. In 2017, the fitness guru posted a photo of himself on Facebook to prove that he was alive and well. But the picture was traced to origins dating as far back as 2013, and the rumors about Simmons only spun further out of control. He sued several publications for furthering the spread of false claims, as well as a private investigator who allegedly put a tracking device on his car at the behest of In Touch Weekly magazine. In 2022, a TMZ documentary claimed that a knee problem dating back to childhood had forced Simmons out of the spotlight. The film suggested that he voluntarily checked out of the celebrity scene and that nobody was holding him captive. In response to the movie, Simmons issued a statement to the New York Post, reassuring the public that he is happy, healthy, and living the life he has chosen to live. This story should serve as a cautionary tale about how sometimes society makes its mind up about someone and directs that person's narrative without their input. While Simmons could have come forward and proved that he's alive and well by going on camera at any point over the last 9 years, he also shouldn't necessarily have to do that in order to avoid the type of wild speculation that has been cast over his life. Number 3. Jussie Smollett. After first finding success as a child actor in the early 90s, Jussie Smollett went on to play several small but noteworthy roles in various films and TV series. His biggest gig came in 2015 when he was cast in the Fox drama series Empire. On January 29, 2019, during his 4th season starring on the show, Smollett went to the Chicago police with claims that he had been attacked by 2 men who doused him with an unknown chemical while yelling racist and homophobic slurs at him. In his initial report, the actor described one of his alleged attackers as white and the other as African American. He accused them of beating him and wrapping a rope around his neck, and he also claimed that they shouted the Donald Trump slogan, "Make America Great Again." Just days earlier, Smollett had received a letter containing a death threat at the studio where he worked. Smollett's report was initially met with widespread sympathy and support, which is understandable, but if it had actually happened, it would have constituted a horrifying act of bigotry and a hate crime, which happens all too often in modern-day America. But as authorities investigated the incident, they began to suspect that Smollett had staged the encounter in an attempt to garner attention on social media. In the days following the supposed attack, Smollett refused to hand his phone over to investigators who were seeking to corroborate his version of events. But he remained a victim in the eyes of law enforcement and the public at large for several more weeks. On February 17th, roughly 3 weeks after the incident, police arrested brothers Abimbola Osendero and Olabinjo Osendero as persons of interest in the case. It would later be revealed that the pair had worked as extras on the Empire set. A few days later, Smollett was charged with filing a false police report. Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson accused the actor of staging the attack for popularity and because he was dissatisfied with his salary, claiming that Smollett took advantage of the pain and anger of racism to promote his career. Authorities also accused him of sending himself the threatening letter that he received at work days before the alleged assault, and of paying the Osendero brothers $3,500 to stage the attack. The brothers corroborated this version of events and were seen buying supplies in surveillance footage that was captured before the bizarre crime. Smollett maintained his innocence throughout the case. He was suspended from Empire just days after his arrest, and it appeared as though he faced a mounting stack of evidence when, in an unexpected twist, the case was suddenly dropped in March of 2019. But the strange saga was far from over. The Chicago police billed Smollett $130,000 for the resources that went into the investigation, and when he refused to pay it, the city sued him for 3 times the amount. In the meantime, the Osendero brothers sued the actor for defamation, and Fox announced that Smollett would not be returning to Empire. In February 2020, a little more than a year after the incident, the case was reopened, and authorities charged Smollett with 6 criminal counts. Just weeks later, the COVID-19 pandemic gripped the planet, and life as most of the world knew it came to a screeching halt. The case finally went to trial in late 2021 after facing numerous delays, and Smollett was found guilty of 5 felony counts of disorderly conduct. In early 2022, the judge overseeing the case sentenced Smollett to 150 days in jail, followed by 30 months of probation, and ordered him to pay a $145,000 fine. He insisted he was innocent right up until the moment he was led out of court. During the disgraced actor's sentencing hearing, Judge James Lynn said, "There is nothing that I can do here today that can come close to the damage you've already done to your own life." He further stated that Smollett turned his life upside down by way of his own conduct and shenanigans, but Smollett has yet to take responsibility for faking the attack. He was released on bond 6 days later after appealing his case. While Smollett appears hell-bent on absolving himself of any criminal wrongdoing, whether or not his acting career will ever recover also remains to be seen. In the eyes of the court and the media, Smollett is the engineer of an elaborate ruse that destroyed his reputation and possibly his career. But there are some people who continue to support his innocence. Number 2, Danny Masterson. As a child, Danny Masterson appeared in over 100 TV commercials, often promoting sugar-filled treats like Kellogg's Frosted Flakes and Tang. His first major acting gig came in the late 90s when he was cast as Stephen Hyde in That 70s Show. He stayed with the series from the very beginning until the end of its final season in 2006. Masterson went on to star in the series Men at Work from 2012 to 2014, followed by The Ranch from 2016 to 2018. In 2017, 4 women filed serious assault allegations against Masterson, claiming that he did horrific things to them against their will during the early 2000s. They accused the actor of abusing his position within the controversial Church of Scientology to wage a campaign of intimidation against them in an attempt to scare them into staying silent. During the early stages of a 3-year investigation that followed, Masterson's character was written out of The Ranch. He maintained his innocence even as the alleged victims, who were all former members of Scientology, became more vocal with their accusations against him. One woman claimed that her dog died under suspicious circumstances. She also accused members of the church of filming her without her permission, following her, chasing her, and posting perverted casual encounter ads online using her name and personal information. Another woman reported seeing a man snapping photos in her driveway and claimed that someone broke one of the windows to her house later that day. In 2020, Masterson was formally charged in connection with alleged assaults against 3 women dating back to 2001 and 2003. He pleaded not guilty, and his attorney accused the women of conspiring against Masterson. The case went to trial in 2022 and ended in a deadlocked jury. Following a retrial in April and May of 2023, the jury convicted Masterson in 2 cases, while remaining hopelessly deadlocked on the 3rd. Prosecutors have decided not to try the 3rd case again, most likely because Masterson already faces 30 years to life behind bars for the 2 cases he was convicted on. He's scheduled to be sentenced in August or September of 2023. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. Number 1. Allison Mack. In 1998, a personal development company called NXIVM emerged into existence. Founded by self-help guru Keith Raniere and his business partner Nancy Saltzman, NXIVM offered self-improvement seminars based on a multi-level marketing scheme. This meant that the company's success and the success of its members depended on the constant recruitment of new members and/or the sale of its products. Multi-level marketing is a controversial business method, and in many cases these setups are found to be illegal pyramid schemes. NXIVM was expensive to participate in, but it enjoyed great success in its early years, and it even grew to include several famous people among its ranks. Two of its most prolific and dedicated members were Seagram heiresses Claire and Sarah Bronfman, who joined NXIVM in the early 2000s. The organization was based roughly 2 hours north of Manhattan in sleepy Albany, New York, but at its peak, its influence extended across the country and beyond. By 2003, there were whispers among journalists about NXIVM possibly being a cult. Claims of this nature first appeared in a Forbes piece that year. Raniere denied the allegations, and NXIVM continued to grow. By the time the second Forbes article against the group came out in 2006, Smallville actress Allison Mack had become a member. Her involvement with NXIVM grew majorly in the coming years. Mack co-founded a subgroup within NXIVM called The Source, which focused on recruiting famous members. She was also a member of the organization's a cappella singing group, Simply Human. Like many other NXIVM members, Mack's life eventually came to revolve around the group's activities, and her acting career took a back seat to her priorities within the organization. As her commitment grew, Mack spent an increasing amount of time in Albany and less time at her home in New York City. On the surface, it would be fair to say that NXIVM had cultish overtones. Over time, the group fell under increased scrutiny that it was an actual cult. In a 2017 expose, the New York Times spoke with former members who claimed that they had been branded as part of their initiation into a secretive subgroup called Dominus Obsequious Sororium, or DOS. Authorities would later claim that Keith Raniere founded DOS in 2015 and appointed Allison Mack as his second-in-command. According to investigators, Allison Mack and several other top-ranking masters recruited female NXIVM members into DOS with claims that it was an elite secret society that focused on empowering women. While Raniere acted as Mack's puppet master, his involvement in directing the group's activities was kept hidden from new recruits who were called slaves. In order to become full-fledged members, women were required to hand over incriminating collateral from their personal lives, like nude photos and other material that could potentially destroy their careers, relationships, and reputations. They were told that if they left DOS or told anyone about its existence, their collateral would be leaked. Recruits were forced to abide by grueling routines centered around sleep deprivation, restrictive diets, and physical punishments. They were told that this was all being done in the name of self-discipline and were berated and talked down to if they struggled to keep up with it. And as the New York Times had claimed, members were branded with a design that covertly featured Keith Raniere's initials, unbeknownst to the recruits themselves. Federal authorities dismantled the NXIVM cult in 2018 by arresting its leaders and highest-ranking members, including Allison Mack, who was accused of trafficking women for Raniere's physical gratification and participating in a forced labor scheme. According to court documents, DOS existed specifically to satisfy Raniere's desires, and Mack knowingly programmed its members into resembling his ideal intimate partner. She also allegedly coerced members into doing things with him that they didn't want to do, but went along with out of the fear of having their collateral exposed or suffering other consequences. All the while, like other NXIVM members, they were being financially bled dry while Raniere, Mack, and other leaders benefited from their payments. Mack ultimately pleaded guilty to federal racketeering and conspiracy counts and admitted to extortion and forced labor under state law. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison, followed by 3 years of probation, along with 1,000 hours of community service, and was ordered to pay a $20,000 fine. The disgraced actress was released early from prison in 2023 after serving 21 months. Keith Raniere is serving a life sentence, and several other former NXIVM members were also sentenced to prison time.
15. Avery Robinson. Complete chaos broke out between 6 family members during a trip to Disneyland in 2019 when they all began fighting with each other in the park's Toontown area. Footage of the melee shows a woman spitting in a man's face before the man punched her multiple times. He then accused another woman in the group of attacking his mother and began shoving her repeatedly. Several bystanders tried to intervene, including one witness who moved a child out of the path of the fighting adults. Another person put one of the brawlers in a chokehold in an attempt to get him under control. During the video, 35-year-old Las Vegas resident Avery Robinson can be heard saying, "I'm ready to go to jail tonight," and referencing a Southern California gang. Despite the evidence against them, everyone involved in the fight reportedly denied any involvement when they first spoke with officers. Avery was hit with 5 felony charges, including assault, making threats, endangering children, and assaulting an employee with his vehicle. He pleaded guilty to several counts and was sentenced to 6 months in jail. Avery's sister, Andrea Robinson, was charged with 5 misdemeanors for attacking him and 2 others during the fight. Her husband, Damon Petrie, was charged with battery for allegedly punching Avery's girlfriend in the face. The couple failed to appear in court, and warrants were issued for their arrest. 14. Tomorrowland stabbing. Disneyland in Anaheim marked a dismal first in 1981 when someone was stabbed to death in the Tomorrowland section of the park. It was the first murder to occur since Disneyland's opening 25 years earlier in 1955. 18-year-old Mel Yorba was visiting the park on a Saturday evening with some friends when he got into an argument during a private party. He was allegedly heavily intoxicated when he was accused of inappropriately touching 28-year-old James O'Driscoll's girlfriend. While it's unclear exactly what happened, witnesses reported that O'Driscoll demanded an apology, and Yorba responded by punching him. A fistfight ensued, and it ended when Yorba was stabbed twice in the chest. O'Driscoll fled the scene on foot, throwing the murder weapon into Sleeping Beauty's moat and throwing his bloody shirt into a trash can along the way. Instead of calling the local paramedics, Disney staff members dispatched a company-employed nurse to the scene. She was unable to treat Yorba's wounds on her own, and he died from his injuries. According to Groovy History, conventional ambulances and police forces weren't allowed inside Disney at the time because of the fear that their presence would shatter the air of fantasy. By the time authorities were alerted to the incident and sent an unmarked van to transport Yorba to the hospital, it was too late to save him. O'Driscoll was charged with murder, and 25-year-old Julie Holdener was also arrested in connection with the stabbing. The charges against Holdener were eventually dropped due to a lack of evidence, while O'Driscoll was sentenced to 16 years in prison after 2 trials. Yorba's family sued Disney for wrongful death, alleging that Yorba may have survived his injuries if help had arrived sooner. Disneyland officials denied the claim and stated their intention to fight the lawsuit, adding that they would not settle out of court. The lawsuit dragged on for several years before a jury awarded Yorba's family $600,000 in damages. 13. Missing guest turns up alive and naked. During a trip to Disneyland Paris in 2019, a 32-year-old Swiss engineer took LSD. It wasn't long before he fell into a man-made lake at Adventureland, prompting a frantic 130-person search. His girlfriend grew increasingly nervous as the park began to close and he still hadn't been found. She let staff members know that her boyfriend was still missing, and the search continued for hours with no luck. It even grew to include police dogs and a helicopter equipped with a thermal camera. While it was unclear whether the girlfriend took LSD, the French newspaper Le Parisien reported that she did not seem to be in possession of all her means. In other words, she wasn't completely with it. The search finally ended during the early morning hours when a man driving home from work in the nearby town of Chessy spotted a naked man in the middle of the road. Alarmed by what he saw, the driver, Benoit, stopped and got out of his car. He told La Parisienne that as he approached, he noticed that the naked man was covered in scratches. He was completely dry, didn't speak French, and didn't remember how he ended up where he was. The confused parkgoer eventually remembered that he'd taken LSD and that his girlfriend was probably worried about him, but he couldn't remember her phone number when Benoit offered to call her. After realizing that the man was harmless, Benoit grabbed some clothes for him and drove him to the edge of the park, where he was soon discovered by searchers. He was initially arrested for using drugs, but authorities ultimately decided to let him go with a warning and released him from custody after he spent a few hours in jail. In a statement to the press, Disneyland Paris shrugged the incident off as no big deal, saying that it didn't cause any significant problems and that most guests didn't even realize there was a problem. During another bizarre LSD-fueled incident that occurred during the 1960s at Disneyland in California, a member of a band that was playing at the park snuck away to indulge in the hallucinogenic drug. He undressed completely, threw his musical instrument into the water, and swam naked to Tom Sawyer Island, where he tried to direct traffic. It wasn't long before panicked motorists alerted security and a guard picked the man up. 12. Francis McMillian. 53-year-old Francis McMillian learned the hard way that misbehaving at Disneyland can get you slapped with a lifetime ban. During a visit to the Hollywood Studios park in 2019, she allegedly slapped a taxi driver several times for telling her he doesn't smoke when she asked him for a cigarette. The driver, Adele Mahmood, told Yahoo Lifestyle that McMillian was completely drunk and out of her mind, and that she had no control. A security guard witnessed the altercation and called the police, telling them that McMillian was a threat to guests. According to an arrest report, she became belligerent when an officer asked her to sit down. The report also describes McMillian as unsteady on her feet, slurring, and with bloodshot eyes. She allegedly admitted several times that she was drunk and demanded a cigarette from responding officers, saying that she refused to talk with them until she could smoke. When an officer asked her for her ID, she reportedly threw her purse at them and said, "Here." Police also accused McMillian of kicking an officer twice while being taken into custody and cursing loudly in front of families. She was charged with battery on a law enforcement officer and disorderly intoxication, and was banned from all Disney parks for life. 11. Big Thunder Mountain Deaths. While riding the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad roller coaster at Disneyland in 2003, 22-year-old Marcelo Torres died in a horrific accident that his family's lawyer would later argue could have been prevented. Torres was riding in the first passenger car of the train, which was led by a pretend locomotive. During the ride, the locomotive's rear wheels came off and an axle jammed in one of the track's railroad ties, causing the locomotive to go airborne at a tunnel entrance. The locomotive crashed into the top of the tunnel, and the car that Torres was riding in slammed into its undercarriage. Torres died from blunt force trauma to the chest and lacerations on his lungs, which caused massive bleeding. 10 others were also injured. Officials blamed the accident on poor maintenance and the failure to provide machinists with proper guidelines. Workers had failed to tighten 2 screws properly, leading to the devastating crash on the train's 13th run of the day. During the first 12 runs, workers noticed an unusual noise. But according to a statement, employees were told to ignore strange noises on the ride, or at least not to assume that a strange noise meant something was wrong. In a report, the state's Occupational Safety Agency recommended that Disney retrain its machinists and rewrite its guidelines with clarity, including an instruction for machinists to take action if they hear an unusual noise. Torres' family sued the park for wrongful death, and the matter was settled for an undisclosed sum. Unlike some other cases you'll hear about today, Disney fully accepted responsibility for its role in the young man's death and apologized to his loved ones. Rumors claim that Marcelo's ghost has been seen around the ride, and that his spirit particularly enjoys hanging out on a bench near the roller coaster during the evening. 10. Special Olympics delegates vanish. The 2022 Special Olympics took place at Disney World in Orlando. Just a day after the Games began, 6 of the event's Haitian delegates went missing. Ranging in age from 18 to 32, they were scheduled to participate in soccer games that they did not show up for, and they also failed to board their flights back to Haiti. The delegates were last seen turning in their hotel room keys at around 2:30 in the afternoon on June 6th, yet their belongings were left behind. The Osceola County Sheriff's Office announced the disappearances the next day, stating that 5 of the individuals were not Special Olympics athletes. In a statement, the agency described the incident as an isolated occurrence and said that no foul play was suspected. When reporters asked why investigators did not suspect foul play, an agency spokesperson declined to comment, citing the ongoing nature of the investigation. The next update on the case came almost a week later, when authorities announced that a seventh delegate, 25-year-old Louis Jacques Villegin, had vanished. He was last seen on June 11th, 5 days after the first 6 delegates disappeared, getting off a bus at Disney's All-Star Sports Resort at around 4:30 p.m. Wilkins was scheduled to fly back to Haiti the next morning, but never boarded his plane. Sheriff Marcos Lopez told reporters that several of the Haitian delegates who did not go missing said that they didn't want to return to Haiti, suggesting that perhaps the missing delegates planned to stay in America and start new lives. But the circumstances surrounding their disappearance remains largely shrouded in mystery, and it's unclear whether their missing persons cases are still active. 9. Pirates of the Caribbean poisoning. Several dozen park visitors were on Disneyland's Pirates of the Caribbean attraction one Saturday night in 1992 when the ride suddenly stopped. They sat there for nearly 5 minutes without an explanation being offered, while employees walked by with handkerchiefs over their faces and evacuated people who were waiting in line. While waiting in the dark, the guests on the ride suddenly became ill. When they were finally evacuated, several people exited the attraction with noticeable skin and breathing issues. Around 30 visitors received treatment at a first aid station. 6 people who experienced the most severe symptoms were treated at the hospital for coughing, tight chests, nausea, skin blotches, and burning eyes. According to one witness, a patient on a cot was vomiting uncontrollably. 2 of the patients who went to the emergency room told the Los Angeles Times that according to doctors, a mace-like substance, but not actual mace, caused their illness. A Disney representative said that they were unable to confirm whether this was true. Meanwhile, victims of the mysterious incident criticized Disney for its response to the emergency. They said that employees should have at least turned the lights on while those stranded on the ride waited for help. Company spokesman Greg Albrecht denied that the several-minute delay that the riders experienced was caused by the unexplained gas release. He said that there's always a 2-minute delay at the end of the ride, while the boats are hooked up for their final ascent to the exit platform. The guests also claimed that when they were finally evacuated, nobody guided them to the first aid station. Moreover, people questioned why hazardous substance experts from the Anaheim Fire Department were not dispatched to the scene. The ride was reopened later that night, while those affected by the alleged poisoning continued to suffer from residual symptoms for several days. Some victims even complained that their condition had worsened, with one woman telling The Times that her face felt like it was on fire. The source of the sudden illness remains unclear to this day. 8. Parade death. Parades are supposed to be joyous events, but the event became synonymous with death for one family after 38-year-old father of 2 Javier Cruz lost his life during a Disney parade in 2004. Cruz had worked hard at Disney World for 8 years leading up to the horrific accident. He was about to enter the Magic Kingdom park dressed as Pluto the dog when a parade float crushed him in a backstage area. Park spokesperson Rena Callahan told the press that she wasn't sure if any visitors saw the tragedy. She said that as far as she knew, it was the first accident of its kind to ever happen at the park. An investigation found that Cruz's foot got caught between 2 sections of a 3-part float, causing him to lose his balance and fall to the ground. The 3rd part of the float ran him over. Using a forklift and a hydraulic lift, employees scrambled to free Cruz, but it was unfortunately too late to save him. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, better known as OSHA, cited Disney for what it described as a serious violation that put employees at the risk of being hit by motor vehicles. In addition to being disciplined, the company was ordered to pay a $6,300 fine. 7. Drunk Disney visitor versus police. One day in early 2023, a man later identified as 30-year-old Edward Stevenson was reportedly seen acting belligerent and cursing in front of children at Disney Springs. Employees asked him to leave, but he allegedly refused and began to harass them. An arrest report stated that Stevenson's brother tried calming him down, but his efforts were unsuccessful, so he left the situation alone. Family members were called to pick him up, but refused because they were disappointed in his behavior. Someone called law enforcement, and Orange County deputies responded to the scene. They initially led Stevenson outside the park so he could call an Uber. He was also accused of walking in the direct path of families and stopping to record and cruise at deputies while they told him to keep heading toward the exit. Once outside the park, Stevenson allegedly refused to call an Uber and became so unruly the police decided to take him into custody. According to the arrest report, it took 3 deputies to subdue and handcuff him. He reportedly told them he was a registered nurse and that they'd better hope they never end up at his emergency room. 6. Trespassers at Discovery Island. Between 1974 and 1999, a small 11.5-acre island in Bay Lake, Florida, showcased rare birds and other exotic animals to Disney World visitors. Known as Discovery Island, it operated for 25 years before it shuttered its doors and moved its animals to the Magic Kingdom. While the exact reasons for its closure are unknown, poor visitor numbers and high maintenance costs are thought to be contributing factors. Since then, Discovery Island has remained abandoned. All of its buildings were left behind, as well as a lot of everyday items like cans of soda and Polaroid photos, as if everyone left in a hurry and never fully cleaned the former park out. It's become an attraction among urban explorers, including a blogger named Shane Perez, who swam through alligator-infested waters with his friends to reach the island in 2009. One of the first things they noticed was the sound of what seemed to them like thousands of birds. Not much longer after that, they encountered a plethora of angry vultures. The group found that electricity still worked, which seemed odd among the overgrowth, garbage, and overall dilapidation that had taken over the park since its abandonment. Perez was ultimately banned from Disney World for his trespassing adventure. In 2020, a 42-year-old YouTuber from Alabama named Richard McGuire was caught camping out on Discovery Island after he triggered a wildlife trail camera. When police found him, he told them that he didn't realize he was trespassing, despite the numerous no trespassing signs, and described his surroundings as a tropical paradise. The man said he'd planned to stay at the campsite for about a week, but his trip was cut short by the arrest. He pleaded no contest to trespassing and was banned from Disney parks for life. 5. Death on Space Mountain. During a trip to Disney World's Magic Kingdom theme park in 2015, a 55-year-old Tennessee woman named Pamela Lynn Haynes lost consciousness on the famous Space Mountain indoor roller coaster. She was rushed to the hospital but never regained consciousness and ultimately passed away from her symptoms. Her causes of death were ruled as cardiopulmonary arrest and septic shock. According to a doctor, Haynes had a history of heart problems including hypertension, congestive heart failure, and COPD. She was among 3 park visitors who've died on Space Mountain, all of whom had pre-existing heart conditions. People with blood pressure, heart, and motion sickness tendencies are cautioned against riding the roller coaster, and with good reason, as cases like this prove. The tragedy involving Haynes came the year after 2 women died on the gentler It's a Small World and Toy Story Midway Mania rides. In both cases, the rides were operating normally, indicating that there was no wrongdoing on Disney's behalf. 4. Thwarted terror attack. A potentially deadly disaster was narrowly avoided in 1995, according to the Baltimore Sun, which reported that federal authorities foiled a terroristic plot to release poison gas at Disneyland. The news outlet reported that just days before the park's Easter rush, officials at Los Angeles International Airport apprehended 2 Japanese travelers who were carrying information and a videotape on how to make a highly toxic nerve gas. The suspects were allegedly members of the Aum Supreme Truth cult that had released sarin into the Tokyo subway system just weeks earlier. 12 people were killed and thousands more were harmed in the attack. According to The Sun, Disneyland executives were the first to alert authorities to the possibility of a planned terrorist attack after receiving a letter that something might happen. Tokyo officials also raised the alarm after learning that 2 men associated with the cult had boarded flights to Los Angeles. The day after news of the plot broke, authorities denied the Sun report and said that rumors of the gas attack were a complete hoax and were never part of a serious plan. In response, the Sun insisted that the article it published was completely factual. It's not unusual for threats to be called into theme parks, according to federal officials, who further noted that most are quickly discredited as hoaxes. To this day, the circumstances surrounding the alleged planned gas attack at Disneyland are unclear. 3. Mortal suffering on the Matterhorn bobsled. 48-year-old Regina Young became the 9th person to die at Disneyland in Anaheim, California in 1984, less than 30 years after the park's grand opening. She was riding alone near the back of an 8-passenger vehicle on the Matterhorn bobsled when she fell out onto the track. The incident occurred roughly halfway down the ride's mountain, and Young was struck by an oncoming bobsled that was traveling at 20 miles per hour. She was killed instantly. Young was at the park with 4 friends who were seated in front of her and didn't see her fall out. They didn't realize Young was missing until the end of the ride, by which point she'd already been hit. Officials were mystified by how and why Young fell out of the bobsled. Nothing was mechanically wrong with the ride, and her seatbelt was unfastened but not broken. Workers would have buckled her in before beginning the ride, according to Disneyland spokesman Bob Roth. Young's family sued Disneyland for the accident, alleging that park employees failed to ensure that her seatbelt was properly fastened. The 2 parties settled for an undisclosed sum, and Disney changed the type of seatbelt that was used on the ride. 9 deaths at Disneyland over a 30-year period may sound like a lot, but as Roth pointed out, more than 230 million people visited the park during those years. While it's sad for anyone to die at an amusement park, it's also incredibly rare. But this wasn't the first or only accident to occur on the Matterhorn bobsled ride. Several years before Young's death in the 1970s, an employee fell out of the ride while trying to retrieve a guest's wig that had fallen off during the ride. At the time, workers were required to find lost belongings by riding the bobsled and attempting to hook the item with a straightened coat hanger. After spotting the wig on their first pass through the ride, staff members made a second run. One staff member leaned out of the vehicle in an attempt to hook the wig and fell out. She plunged 50 feet to the ground and survived with a broken pelvis, shoulders, and ribs. The outlook was initially bleak, with doctors acknowledging that she was lucky to survive but would probably never walk again. Against all odds, she regained her mobility and continued working at Disney World for years to come. 2. Fugitive found at Disney World. Quashon Burton was wanted by federal authorities for a year before he was captured at Disney World in late 2022. He'd gone on the run from New York City, and by some wildly unlikely chance, a federal officer working his case recognized him at the amusement park. Burton faced allegations that he fraudulently acquired COVID-19 related financial benefits from the government. When he realized he was wanted, he fled from his Brooklyn home. It was only by chance that Federal Post Inspector Jeff Andre happened to be vacationing at Disney with his family, and that they decided to go to Animal Kingdom that day. Andre recognized Burton based on a distinctive tattoo on his neck. Prosecutors accused the alleged fraudster of using at least 4 people's identities without their knowledge or permission in order to obtain forgivable business loans from the government. Burton allegedly received around $150,000 that he wasn't entitled to, and he was also accused of using multiple false identities during his time on the run. Andre alerted the local sheriff's office, and deputies caught up with Burton about an hour later at a bus stop. He reportedly refused to show his ID and resisted arrest, but was taken into custody. Burton continued refusing to admit who he was, even after his identity was confirmed through fingerprints. There was ultimately nothing he could do to avoid facing the justice system, and his leisurely vacation from law enforcement was brought to an abrupt end. His case appears to be ongoing. 1. Deadly monorail crash. Disney World's famed monorail is a staple of the park and a main mode of transportation for getting from one part of the massive resort to another. It made headlines in 2023 as Florida Governor Ron DeSantis considered signing a new law that would give the state transportation department oversight of the system. While some consider this a senseless flex of government power, lawmakers insist it's for safety purposes. The Disney World monorail has an impeccable safety record, with only one fatal incident occurring since its opening in 1971. It happened during the pre-dawn hours on July 5, 2009, when Monorail Pink and Monorail Purple collided at the resort's ticket and transport center. One of the trains rammed into the back of the other, killing 21-year-old operator Austin Vunnenberg. 7 others, including 6 visitors and 1 employee, survived and were released at the scene after being evaluated by paramedics. The accident was largely blamed on a miscommunication between operators. Before the collision, up to 4 passengers were allowed in the pilot's cabin. Afterward, the company quickly changed its policy to no longer allow anyone but the operator into this section of the train. Several other changes were also made, including the installation of security cameras at monorail stations, along with new policies to ensure safety. 13 years later, in 2022, an employee who was working near the accident scene told BuzzFeed that they struggle with ongoing PTSD due to the horror that they witnessed that day. Would you rather go viral for an embarrassing but victimless act of public stupidity that will forever remain on the internet? Or would you rather live with knowing you deeply hurt a close friend, but that it would always stay between the two of you? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!